Trading Time with your host, John Rousseau.
Sam Hunt is an industrial designer, furniture maker. He runs Cordova Woodworking out of Penticton, British Columbia. He's got a lot of really great insights into the industry and how to kickstart a potential trade and service business. I look forward to our conversation and sharing it with you today on Trading Time. Sam, thank you very much for joining us today after the holidays. I hope you took some time off and you're refreshed, ready to get back to it.
I did. I couldn't wait to take some holidays, and yeah, I extended them as long as I could. So I am feeling pretty good now. I needed them.
Awesome. Do you sleep?
It depends which project I'm working on.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I've got a 1.5-year-old, so rest is pretty important these days when I can come by it. But I'm a furniture maker, and those projects kind of build in your head a lot, and I do lose some sleep over them, just trying to keep clients and myself happy and sane. So yeah, I do get some sleep, but there can be some restless nights.
Yeah. I've often wondered how, as entrepreneurs and industrial designers, we monetize that time that you've just described.
Right.
Where you're designing a project in your brain at 2:00 in the morning, instead of in front of the keyboard in what would be classified as typical working hours.
Right.
Seems like a very difficult thing to try to monetize.
Yeah, it is. I think my thought on that is the answer is kind of more on the industrial design side, and I guess that's kind of like you build that up as capital, with the goal of trying to coming up with the most compelling designs that people are willing to pay a premium for. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you're ever really going to get paid for the time there. I don't think we're always going to be able to bill for it, but in the sense that in the future that the demand for your work is high enough that you can justify quite a high price, then maybe you get your dividend then.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's generally how I try to wrap my mind around it.
I remember seeing this article in Dwell a few years back where this industrial designer had come up with this furniture line in the 60s, and it didn't really hit. But his daughter had all of the schematics.
Right.
All of that industrial design work. And she put the pieces back into production and everything hit.
Wow.
That many years later.
Yeah.
Right? You go 50 years later, all of a sudden your stuff is like in fashion and timely, and that frustrates me to hear stories like that, right? Yeah. Or to hear stories of like a great author writing something back in like the 1800s and selling 200 copies, but now it's like the most renowned work of all time.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's like something you said about it being a little romantic in the sense that, I don't know, I mean, for my son, let's say I don't become a rich man off of making furniture, but for whatever reason he finds what I did an interesting and meaningful thing to do, and maybe my designs in the future are something he can build success off. Maybe that was his way of getting a big inheritance. I don't know.
So planting the tree for them to be able to have shade under one day.
It could be that, but yeah, I mean, it certainly would be frustrating to work your whole life making and designing really beautiful things that are valuable to the world, but you don't get to see people enjoy them the way you want. But doesn't mean we should stop.
Yeah. Industrial design, most people have never heard those two words together. They don't know what an industrial designer is.
No.
People ask me, what do you do? I tell them I'm an industrial designer. I think they immediately go to like a gas facility, a refinery, or a smelter or something.
Right.
When I say the words industrial designer, what comes to mind for you?
I mean, yeah, when people ask, oh, what is that? I say, well, it's you can imagine like product design, but I mean, it can be pretty multifaceted, anywhere from somebody designing like an iPod or a phone, all the way to somebody, making gaskets for an industrial plant. So someone who kind of, yeah, I mean, it can be aesthetically driven, the design, but generally there's you're designing around a specific use case, and for us it's homes and furniture and these kind of products. Yeah.
Our industry, how do we say this? Our industry feels like it's under siege. Our romantic boutique industry.
Right.
You know, when we look at where, if you were to ask somebody, where does furniture come from?
Yeah.
They would say Asia.
Yeah.
They would say Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
If they really looked at where it came from, or Asia, Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
They wouldn't think necessarily, oh, well, my furniture comes from a bespoke industrial designer based out of Penticton.
Right.
Like you are.
Yeah.
So why are we doing that? What are we doing? Why are we doing this? You know what I mean? Like, why are we designing furniture in an environment that seems so counterpoised to our success?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't want you to have some crazy epiphany and run out the door right now, but
no. Sometimes I wonder myself. I'm like, you're like, yeah. I mean, I think in general, like with industrial design, like people are trying to. I mean, I think the one big part of my answer I missed in the previous question was industrial design is generally you're trying to design stuff to be built for scale. That's like the typical job, you know. And with furniture making, especially handcrafted furniture making, that kind of goes out the window. But it doesn't mean you can't apply trying to add as much efficiency as possible to making domestic furniture products.
Yes.
So yeah, why are we trying to do it? I mean, for me, like why I got into this in the beginning, I actually ended up going back to school for a bit of industrial design, and like got some more like technical training and soft skills training on that side. Furniture making was a hobby, and then I found out about small batch furniture production, and I thought that was like the coolest thing ever. So you get kind of like micro scale, building out like a suite of products or a suite of parts, and I thought that was like a pretty compelling like avenue for business to pursue. It was a bit naive, like it's really difficult. It's extremely difficult, even if you do get a bit of that scale, because our furniture products that people are used to are like they're very cheap, like very cheap price, and I think a lot of people are just used to, like, you know, a chair's worth $100. Like that's what a chair is worth.
Right.
When in reality, it's very difficult to make any piece of hardwood furniture yourself at a price anywhere close to retail or e-commerce. So yeah,
And
I mean,
why? Why is that?
Why is it inexpensive?
No, why is it expensive? Why is it so much more expensive to build a chair as you've just described in a boutique setting?
Well, I mean, I think it starts obviously with this is a long answer.
Yeah,
to that question.
unpack it, man. Unpack it. Let's go through it.
Well, I mean, if you're starting off with like quality, like let's say you want to make a really good chair or a really good dining table that's going to last someone as long as they need it, or as long as it's like a reasonable time frame. Well, you're going to have to start out with pretty good material. Okay, so you're going to have to find a good material supplier, and then once you even get that material, you're going to have to take out, you know, some of the better pieces that are suitable for the piece of furniture making. So the material is already expensive. I tell people, you know, there's one dining chair I make, and just the way I wanted to make it, I make it out of a solid block of wood, and that piece of wood costs $60, just for the raw timber. So I'm already halfway past what a lot of people think a dining chair is worth just for a seat back that I haven't even made.
Right.
This is just one chair. This is one example, but then you kind of have to go into, well, I don't want this thing to fall apart. I'm already charging what I know I have to charge to make a living. I'm going to make this really strong because that's not fair to a customer to have to pay a premium for a product that isn't going to last as long as it should.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then from there, like, if you want everything to kind of look really nice and be beautiful, that takes a lot of time to kind of dial things in. So, I mean, that's kind of like the 3-part answer. Material, structure, and making it look beautiful. These things take a lot of time, and the materials cost a lot. And then, you need the space and the investment and building out a shop suitable to making custom furniture, it takes a lot of time and yeah, it's not a simple thing to build a chair or any piece of furniture. And that's a tricky thing. Like, people are, I think, very used to furniture being inexpensive, which is fine. I think, Canada is a very expensive place to live. And I think that I'm torn. Like, I think, Canada's a very expensive place to live. And I think there's families that cannot afford expensive furniture. So I understand that there's utility and a need for inexpensive pieces of furniture. I think that's probably important for people. You shouldn't not be able to have a dining table because
you can't
afford it. That's not fair. But I think for me, like, it kind of gets a little personal because furniture is very important to me. But I think maybe this is what it used to look like not that long ago. Is like you kind of built your home, and then, or you buy a home, whatever, you rent a home, and you fill it with meaningful things. You fill it with furniture that is important to you. And I think furniture just kind of falls in this interesting space in that it has this utility. It changes the space you live in. It's not just like a dishpan that you put away. It's something you use, it's something you experience, it's something you share. So for me, furniture can be quite a meaningful thing, and we can fill our homes with meaningful things that last a long time. So for me, it's more like, I don't think we need to get rid of all the cheap furniture, but if people can kind of, it's not a huge paradigm shift, but a bit of value shift of getting away from this, I'm just going to get this, basically what I see it's more and more common is like a temporary piece of furniture. Like, we didn't know what we wanted in this space, so we just got this for now. And I'm like, well, like, if you could afford it, why didn't you buy something? Why didn't you just leave the room empty for a month and think about what you really want, and then have it made, or find something used and fix it up, something that was made really well not that long ago, and fix it up and have something meaningful in your home that you can have or sell later.
Instead of some transitional piece of junk.
Yeah,
made out of particle board.
Yeah, it's like, and again, like, I understand the need for inexpensive furniture. I don't think there's any way of getting around that, especially with what it costs to live here anywhere. Like, people.
You have inexpensive furniture in your house?
Yeah, I mean, we had, our son was born not too long ago, and at that stage in your life, you're in a bit of a rush and scramble to figure things out. And we needed a change table, and I'm not, I'm trying to bring in income for my family and grow my business and cover these bases. So I need to get a change table, and like, it's serving its purpose. It's just fine. Do I wish I could have had something beautiful and solid that would last forever there? Certainly. But, I had something that needed to be done. I needed storage, and that needed to be there.
Yeah.
But we also kind of have a general rule in our house for, things we want to do, things we want to add, that we just don't do half measures anymore. Like our basement, doesn't have much furniture in it right now at all because we haven't decided exactly what we want. Maybe we're saving up a little bit of money to get exactly what we need. That's going to work there for a really long time. And yeah, I guess it's kind of just like, it's simple. It's like maybe less is more. Like you can wait.
Yeah, probably.
You don't have to, I feel like every single thing I buy or is given to me or something from like Home Sense is like out the door in a year. And that's like, it's just a bit strange to me when I have like the cutting board I made 5 years ago. That's like, I barely oil and it's like still the same.
Looks like it's brand new.
And then there's the one that's still made out of a domestic material. I'm like, oh, this is a nice cherry cutting board that I was given. And I'm ungrateful for the gift, but I just threw that out. And I'm like, oh, they're just not, like they're using a similar material, but they're just cheaping out on glue. Like it's just a bit strange, like, for not that much more money, you could have something that lasts 5-10 years.
Yeah.
Versus, I think it's more just trying to be like aware, like what I think people should like focus on, like being aware of what they are buying. Like, oh, this is going, I'm not going to have this for very long.
Well, and when you really do the metric of it too, right? You take a look at cumulative spend on the problem.
Yeah.
Let's say the problem is seating.
Yeah.
How many junk couches are you going to buy in 10 years?
Yeah. No, it's shocking.
Right? You look at it, you're like, hey, well, I spent $1,500 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
In a 10-year period for a couch scenario. And then you look at it and you're like, well, how much does like a Canadian made couch cost? Like a good one.
Yeah.
Like, well, it's 10 grand.
Yeah.
Like, well, how long does it last? Well, they've got like really nice fabrics and foam and proper frame and they're comfortable, they're beautiful.
And it can be reupholstered or like if it's a solid piece of furniture, it can be refinished very easily. Yeah. Relative to, like a veneer top. Yeah, I don't know if like a cheaper veneer top piece of furniture you can even do once these days. If it's
because it's so thin. The veneer is so thin.
Yeah. And I think there's like another thing, like maybe people don't know, like, I mean, I don't want to keep this like too specific to just furniture, but like there's just like ways around getting like quality products in your home is like, people also ask, they come to me with like a budget or they say, what would you do with this much money? I would go find an old table, like an old one, like that's, and get it refinished. You could even do it yourself and it's going to last forever. Even if it's veneer, the older veneered tables, especially the kind of ones from the mid-century era is like it's thicker veneer. That's how they used to make dining tables because they were stable and they didn't warp. And that was just how a good dining table was made. There's nothing wrong with veneer if it's made the right way. Yeah.
There is a bit of a romance factor to a solid wood piece.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. I mean,
but it definitely commands a higher price.
Yeah.
And is more rare, isn't it?
It definitely is. And I think like a nice thing about a solid wood, I think probably is pretty specific to a table, is that it can be, let's say you are someone who really wants like a new dining table every 5 years. You buy a big solid wood dining table, well, you can have that made into a new table. I've done mine 3 times now. I just like, for the space I had or the style I wanted or something I wanted to try, right. I just, I reused the same top and I made a new base configuration. And you can keep doing that for quite a while. I mean, you can sand a thick tabletop as many times as you're going to need in a lifetime. Yeah. And you can keep having a nice, beautiful piece of furniture and still kind of refresh your home if that's what's important to you. Versus, buying something that either, you replace it not because you don't like it anymore, because it doesn't work. So, yeah, I mean, I would, encourage people to think about it a little more like that. Just
what you've described is systemic, though. That's the problem with what you've described. It's not just furniture, is it?
No.
It's our buildings, too.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, so you look at it and you're like, okay, well, if we're living in particle board houses,
yeah,
and we don't take architecture seriously or craftsmanship seriously the way a country like Switzerland or Austria or Germany does, then what can we expect from our furniture department?
Yeah.
More of the same.
Yeah, or even less. I mean,
That's right, even less.
yeah, even less.
Even less, because it's just furniture.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't keep the snow off our head.
Yeah.
It's just furniture.
And I think it's like, on like the topic of industrial design, let's not forget like these products, you know, if they're from IKEA, like these are brilliant industrial designers. Like they're designing exactly what, like their execution is exactly what they were after. They're trying to build something as light as possible, easy to assemble. And I don't know if it's like, you know, planned obsolescence with their products. I mean, it very well could be, but the reality is the materials they're willing to put into it, the structure they're willing to put into it to get it to a price point that's so low, and like it will fail.
Yeah.
So
The light thing's interesting, isn't it? Like the weight of a piece.
Yeah.
Like dictates it's got to be made out of finger jointed pine. You know what I mean?
Or less. Just like, yeah, it's
light finger jointed pine.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's the design. These things are designed to just be as cheap as possible, and that's what you get, right?
So you could almost envision these pieces that you've described as props in the set of your life.
Yeah.
And very similarly to how you would refresh a set every so many years, these pieces come into your home like a change table. They're seasonally used in that season of life. They're Facebook Marketplace shortly after that for $50.
Yeah.
And so on.
Yeah.
They're not heirloom pieces.
No, I never really thought about it like that, and that's pretty accurate. Like, again, this stuff kind of exists for the utility for a lot of people that need it, but I think like as life goes on, like you can spend a bit of money on your home to make it more meaningful, and you can get a lot more. Maybe like you're saying, some cost savings over a lifetime. And yeah, I think it's just that. Like, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it just like even if it's one piece, you can add some meaning to your home through objects, which I think everyone knows. Like, we normally get that out of experience, but I do think there's such thing as like a meaningful object, you know?
Yeah, that's right. There is.
Yeah. And I think like that's kind of what furniture is. So it'd be nice if we didn't lose sight of that, and reach out to, you know, builders, makers in your local area to see if it's something that can be done by someone, because you never know, the price might not be so crazy, or they might be willing to work with you if you give them some creative freedom, and, you know, don't grind them down on that. There's a lot of value, but, you know, there's people that want to kind of explore new avenues, and maybe they'll make something super special for you for something you can't afford, and hopefully it snowballs, and then, you know, that person ends up having a successful business where they're helping out a lot of people. I mean, you know, it doesn't work without the customers.
Yeah, I wonder how we rewire that philosophy into our clients. You know, like we've both been very lucky to have worked for people who kind of share that philosophy, but that's not common.
No.
Like having people, you know, I feel as though that the type of business that we operate could be a lot larger.
Yeah.
Is where I'm going with this, right? With not a lot of extra convincing required.
No. I agree. Like, one thing I've noticed in this business, I mean, you know, there's so many challenges to keep this thing going, but one thing I noticed is, like, you know, it doesn't take a lot of work to keep me busy. Like, it doesn't take me like a ton of sales to keep me busy. So, you know, if I just get a little more busy, like, all of a sudden I need employees. And then maybe I can start to afford to, you know, batch out products. You know, I don't think my price point is ever gonna like come way down. It's just not reality. But certainly you could get like what I was saying with small batch production, get some scale. If you can keep that engine running, and invest in good tools that can speed things up, like I could certainly make it more approachable for a lot of people.
Man, the price of tooling has sure shot up.
Yeah, it's tricky.
Even since we did our investment in tooling, I just cannot believe what's happened to the price of tooling.
It's yeah, I mean, it's never ending.
It's insane. So then so let's take to your natural conclusion what you've just proposed. You find some products that you can easily replicate at a decent price.
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, well, in order to do that, I need to go out and buy a bunch of new machines, or as you say, maybe you are parting things out to larger shops that have already made those investments. But you think, like, if you had to go out and buy all the gear,
Yeah.
and it's not like you just buy the gear and then it's like, then you're settled. It's like, well, that gear needs somewhere warm to sleep at night.
Yeah.
And that gear needs to be not constantly fed, but it needs to be fed material.
Yeah.
That needs a warm place to sleep at night too. And then you get into the square footage problem. And we call it in our shop 2-footitis, where every 6 months you need 2 feet in every direction.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you couple that with the fact that we, as I'm sure you've seen in Penticton or surrounding area, the cost to rent industrial real estate is astronomical.
Yeah. 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 I
Like
mean,
to be able to do what we do
yeah.
somewhere legally under zoning bylaws
Yeah.
it's cost a fortune.
No, I mean, it's tricky. You kind of have to have a little bit of luck to get started, certainly, or you have to be willing to work somewhere that's not that great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I look now where I'm at, and I'm pretty happy. The space it's going to work for a little while.
Tell me about the space. How big is it?
It's 1,100 square feet in
Okay.
Penticton. Yeah, it's pretty simple space, steel structure, and yeah, it's safe. Like, got some windows.
Yeah.
Last space I didn't have windows. Was not great. Yeah, zoning's is what I need. So I'm not in a rush to leave. I do look out at the market and I'm like, it'd be nice to maybe eventually have something like a big bay door or something a little more independent, something I can outfit maybe a little differently. And it's tricky. Like, it's mine. I'm like, wow, that would really eat my profits if I just had that kind of extra nice to have or what is necessary in a few years.
Well, you'd really have to have a lot of downstream demand, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you need a lot of demand to kind of make that kind of whatever you want to call it, jump, brave
Quantum
decision.
leap.
Yeah, like, oh, this is where I need to go, what I need to do to grow this business.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that is a big problem. Like, if we had more space to work in, maybe this would be there'd be more people that would be willing to try and do something like this, which is important to me because, like, again, don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think, like, domestically made products is important, and yeah, if we can figure out a way to get more industrial zoning, I think is probably where it starts.
Oh, that's a good suggestion. More industrial zoning.
Yeah, I mean, if there's just more of that, and, like, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to complain, but I moved from Squamish, and they opened up a whole bunch of it was a big long row of bays for industrial. It was zoned industrial, but it was, like, from my opinion, I'm sure a lot of people disagree, but it was, like, a little too flexible. You could have a bakery and a brewery in there. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden you have way too much demand for this scarce resource. There's already enough demand with people like you and I doing what we do, and but now we can have a brewery and a bakery in there, which those are great businesses, and I love going to them. But that's just driving the price up for what we see is important in Canada. We need more.
Yeah, even if those businesses and that sector is suffering from the same thing that we are
Yeah,
in availability in industrial space, which they need as much as we do,
they need as much as we do.
we still need more.
Yeah, we need
Yeah.
we need more. But for me, it's just like when you make all that, when we have this problem of not enough builders, not enough makers, and not enough production facility in Canada, we make that kind of decision. It doesn't like solve the problem there, right? I don't think we have any shortage of breweries.
No.
And I'm not trying to like make it about breweries or anything like that at all. It's just like if you wanted to do like production, you need a very specific type of space. And it would be nice if that kind of it was looked at that way. Like we're not gonna open things up too big, because we need to, we have this problem where we have a housing shortage. These companies, if you want a company to grow and be bigger, they need somewhere to put their equipment and grow their business. And if it doesn't exist, then it just makes that problem harder to solve. So, yeah, it would be nice to have more kind of dedicated industrial space, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's lovely that we have food production and ethanol production and all of that. That's great. That's wonderful. But let's not forget that we need people with tools in their hands building things.
Yeah.
And they need space to do that.
Yeah. No, exactly. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't have any, like, I'm not a city or municipal planner, so I don't know exactly how it can be done or how it looks. But I mean, yeah, I think maybe, I guess it's something more like purpose-built places, with successful builders in mind to help them grow.
So live work,
Yeah, I mean, it could be like that.
like a live work. You've got like a 2,000 square foot space above
Yeah,
your 2,000 square foot business.
yeah,
It's essentially think of like row housing in the UK,
right.
except there's an industrial bay, there's a live space,
Yeah, I mean, no, that's a great
rooftop patio.
idea. Rooftop patio,
Right?
Nice lifestyle.
I don't know.
You never get away from work. I don't know how everyone would feel about that, but
Do you get away from work?
no.
How? This is how we started the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Do we get away from work anyhow?
No, I mean, I did my best over my holidays. I was just like, I just need to shut my brain off. But yeah, I still kind of thought about furniture the whole time. But yeah, a live work is like, I think that's great because, it allows you to kind of maybe save a bit of money on your kind of personal day to day, and which would free up some kind of mental bandwidth to grow the business that is important and it's demand for. So yeah, that's pretty sensible.
That was more or less the situation that we had when we were operating out of the district of Summerland. We had a commercial assembly that we were renting. And then we, right down the street, like literally right down the street was our house.
Yeah.
And you're looking at this, I'm going like, I'm spending this much on my lease at work, I'm spending this much on my mortgage.
Yeah.
Sure would be nice if they were like on top of each other.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I see that works I've seen some guys, I've chatted with them that do what I do, and that's kind of where the equation ends up for them, is they end up building a space on their property. But I just sure would be nice, like, because you're kind of limited at that point, what you're allowed to do or what you can afford to do,
Or how big it can be, right?
how big it can be.
Yeah.
So
Home-based business-wise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what you're allowed to do, how big of a business you're allowed to grow, which, I mean, it certainly can work, but, if we had, just more space, I don't really know where it comes from, but.
Well, you mentioned city planners.
City
So we have
planners,
these
yeah, I mean.
people that are like industrially educated, institutionally educated,
Yeah,
right? They've never even seen a building like this before, or
No.
a tool or a tool package,
Yeah.
or been in a shop, manufacturing facility, or understand the importance of it.
yeah,
And they're wondering why we don't have enough housing,
yeah,
right? Maybe we haven't. Maybe it's because we have put these planners in charge of our
Yeah, so maybe
our
it's
towns that we don't have more of this industrial space.
yeah, so maybe it is just kind of a matter of like community outreach and discussion to see how we can kind of kill two birds,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's out of reach. Like making everyone talks about how efficient and economically sound it is to just make a tilt-up kind of concrete or steel frame thing. Maybe easier said than done without kind of I don't have any experience in that kind of realm, but you know, I don't actually know of any like examples of kind of city backed, provincially backed, like purpose built industrial spaces, but
Yes.
I've thought of it. It's a kind of an interesting conversation, right? I know in like the bigger cities in Vancouver, there's like kind of resident artist spaces, which it's really important. I think everyone needs a creative hub, but yeah, maybe we need something that kind of looks like that for a specific type of builder. I think maybe that's kind of where it lands is more specific and specialized.
Right.
Like I'm at that time in my life, and a lot of my friends are too, are trying to get into the housing market and maybe buy their first home, and it's super challenging. And for me, like I'm like, what is the answer to this whole problem? I mean, it's so complicated. Like politically, it's just, and like financially, and space. It's just like a huge problem. Like there's no quick way to solve anything. But I think a good like a part of the answer is kind of like production based home building. And
What does that mean?
well, like I'm not saying build a whole bunch of like mobile homes, but I mean there's and I don't know where the land comes from. Like I don't have that answer, so I can't really speak to that. But in terms of like the affordability, I think we could, I don't, without coming a bit short of maybe like a wartime effort, if we had like production facilities to build homes quickly, the price I imagine would come down a little bit. And funny enough, the home I bought, it's kind of like morphed over the years into being a normal home, but it's two modular homes put together over just like a concrete basement. And then some things happened over the last 20 years that just kind of turned it into a normal home. You wouldn't know from the outside that it was built like that. But
It's a lot of housing inventory locally has been built that way.
Yeah. And it turns out, which is really interesting, because I got a heat pump installed, was one of the first things I did. Got a grant from the government and did that. And when the engineer came in to do all the kind of evaluation of the home, he's like, these homes are actually built really well because, they were built inside and they have quality control. And they're always, he's like, I never find any insulation missing in these homes, because his theory is that, the guy or girl that was punching out on Friday wasn't ground down and they just kind of got the job done. They never said good enough. They were able to just kind of finish the work because they were working in a happy environment. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I think there's some sense to it. But I do obviously like that quality control element on like a manufacturing line makes a lot of sense. I mean, and me personally, I like making products over and over again. I think a lot of people might find that boring in furniture making if you're a hobbyist. But for me, it's like I really like drilling into the process of making my furniture faster and better every time. And I imagine it's similar for someone who's operating that business, making homes quickly in a safe kind of indoor environment in Canada.
What a concept!
Yeah, what a concept, right? Like it's not like mind blowing, but it's just like, I don't know, like, there's good money to be made, I think, for trades, framers, builders, just to go make custom homes. I think there's no doubt there, but I mean, I think there's like a pretty good business case to someone who wants to like bang out like housing packages and make them really nice, make them somewhere worth like where it's not like, someone like everyone I know who's trying to buy a home, like that's what I get for this much money.
Yeah,
It's like you can make something nice. Like it doesn't have to be huge and big and fancy, but
There's a lot of goodwill in the house prices these days, isn't there?
Yeah, it's
when you look at it, you're like, how much goodwill am I spending on this house right now? Because like that was always the thing that we looked at, where we're like, you're looking at this house, they're like, okay, you want this much for that house. Or let's just break it down. How much did the foundation, if I had to build it today, at today's rate, what would that foundation cost? What would that framing package cost? The truss package, the roof package. You're like, because by the time you go into this place and you start looking around, you're like, well, all the bathrooms need to be gutted.
Yeah.
Like all the fixtures they're done.
Yeah.
Right? This might be leaking, that might be leaking. So let's just propose that we're going down to the studs anyhow. Taking the wood paneling and gutting the place.
Yeah.
How much does that frame, how much does that skeleton, that envelope cost? Not much.
Yeah.
Not much.
But yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I guess it's a build it and they will come, or maybe this kind of thing exists more than I know about. But it would be nice to see resources going towards that, in the sense if it's a big facility, or if it's some people that put some money and some business savvy together that want to do it themselves. Like, I mean, I think I know it's possible because I live in one of these places. Mm-hmm. But it would just be nice to see some more of it. You can build a nice community with these kind of these types of homes that are built well and more approachable to people that just want a place to live, a nice place to live, where they can build some equity and.
I've talked to some local builders about exactly what you've proposed.
Yeah.
And what you've proposed runs 100% contrary to their business model.
Right, like custom home builders.
Right.
Yeah.
You think about it. I've asked them. I said, like, because I'm thinking about building a modular panel facility whereby you come to us with your assembly, we sketch it out in CAD, all of the components, everything. It shows up on a truck.
Right.
Is that valuable to your business? Right? Like, could you build 3 more homes a year if you had somebody that was building your wall packages,
right,
and your timber frame? And their business model is to have guys on site doing that. Mm-hmm. Outside.
I didn't know that.
Outside. Well, but it is though, right? Because you think you're like, well, we've got all these carpenters and framers and everything. We're going to move them inside now, right? So there is an economics in inefficiency,
right,
that we can't lose sight of.
Yeah.
The other thing that most people don't think about is there also is an economics in the supply that we have currently, and so all of a sudden we increased the housing supply. That's going to solve the problem. That's going to push a lot of people who barely qualified for mortgages underwater if the price of their house drops.
Yeah.
Right? So there are a lot of really dynamic equations around the housing production and supply thing that you don't immediately think of. You just think as a craftsman, well, I know how to build stuff. Why don't we just build more stuff?
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, well, that's a big discussion.
Yeah.
And then you need to have municipalities that are on board, that have available land that they've zoned out properly for your development, and you need a conducive lending environment. And if you have both of those things, which is fairly anomalous, then you need a whole bunch of really qualified tradespeople to come and do all of the work, which we don't have as well.
Yeah.
So we're in just like a major, what it feels like to be, and you've kind of described it, it's like a major predicament.
No, I mean, it's tricky. And I think there's like, for something like this, I think the problem of housing is going to be, this is like maybe more just personal thought on it. It's like, it's going to be solved very slowly.
Yeah.
So I don't think like the housing prices are going to fall through the floor. That said, like, I mean, talk the talk, walk the walk, whatever you want to call it. I don't mind like if that happens to some degree. I mean, I don't want everyone to lose their kind of savings, but I mean, I don't want to see people in homes. I don't want this to be a problem anymore. Yeah. It's annoying. Like, and I'm lucky. Like we managed to do it. But I think for me, that's more like then the money side of it is like, I think there's a lot of value to live here already. So I think we should focus on getting them some homes.
Yeah, you're right.
And the problem's going to be solved slowly. So I don't think that's, like
So
with
how-
all you said, like all the problems it is
Yeah.
to get to that point where we can fab up homes indoors, like, all those like kind of micro problems, they're not micro problems, all those smaller problems that add up to the big problem need to be solved as well.
Yes.
So if we can just kind of, stay positive, one foot in front of the other, and get to the point where, where it's not a losing battle anymore, let's just kind of stay focused.
So we start building up the availability of industrial land. That land gets occupied by endeavors like what you've proposed. Your endeavor, a panelization endeavor, so on. Industrial support. That gets built up. We have a more conducive lending environment. We're educating tradespeople more readily, and I've interviewed people about how they're trying to improve that in the school system. Kind of adopt more of a European model where at an earlier age they're going into the trades, they're learning more about what we do. That starts happening. Wages start going up because that's really what we need. If we're going to have house prices as high as they are in Canada, double what they are in comparison to the United States, our wages need to come up, right? Because like we've just said, well, if all of a sudden house prices go down, there's going to be a lot of people underwater. Right. So we can't have that. Well, what can we have? Wages need to go up. And you're like, okay, well, how are we going to do that? So this is a really precarious situation. As you say, it's going to happen slowly. Hopefully it does. And we have sort of a shift in our philosophy where our businesses don't have to struggle so much to expand, as we've discussed.
I mean, I think in terms of like one thing I always think about with trade work is bringing the wages up, and like this isn't an answer to that problem, but it's for the young people that are considering getting into trades, is to talk about bring them into the conversation about business ownership, because like I think when I was younger, you always hear about like, oh, you can make like $60 an hour or $100 an hour overtime if you go up north or whatever. You've heard that conversation.
A whole life.
And, and it's not untrue. Like I used to be kind of cynical of it. I'm like, yeah, BS, like show me your paycheck. But, it turns out it is true. I've got, a lot of friends, a good number of friends, at least like half a dozen or so went up there for a while and they made that kind of money. But I mean, I think like the reality of it is like, it's not sustainable. Like it's hard to do that work, even though they treat you pretty well. You get this like cool camp and all this stuff. Like everyone I know that's done it comes back.
Right.
And I'm like,
you mean they're not living up in the Arctic Circle?
yeah. I'm like, they come back as like, there's like more to life than just like a big fat paycheck and working like these absurd hours. So where I'm going with this is like through business ownership, you can make tons of money. Right? It doesn't have to be this hourly thing. And I just don't know why, like, I don't know if it was just like, school counselors or teachers, or we just didn't have industry professionals come in and speak with us. But that was never part of the conversation, was
entrepreneurialism
or, I mean, and in the trades, like, you can have pretty meaningful work. And you can have some scale in a business. This is like kind of meant, like what I'm talking about isn't, if there's people listening that are younger, that's great. But if there's people that have the ears of younger people, I would implore them to talk about this, or figure out a way to get people that know about this to talk with them about what it would look like if you pursued becoming a business owner in the trades, whether it's plumber, HVAC, framer, furniture maker, whatever's clever. I just think that's an important conversation because personally, I think there's nothing wrong with wanting to make a lot of money in your life. I think that's something that doesn't get talked about at a lot of dinner tables.
No, you're right.
And I think there's one thing in common with the wealthiest people on the planet is that they own a business of some sort. And I'm making the extreme example, just to kind of be poignant. And that's kind of where you want to like focus on, or you can look at other examples, like you've got HVAC businesses. What's happening right now in that space is you've got private equity firms coming into communities like ours. And I'm not necessarily saying there's anything wrong with this. Like if you build a business and you can sell it, that's hell yeah. That's a big win in your life. You can go do something else now. But yeah, you look at that, you say, okay, there's private equity companies coming in and rolling up, buying multiple different HVAC companies. What's happening there? Well, their financials look really good. So that's a signal to you that maybe you should go into business in one of these spaces. I can understand the argument like, well, if the big guys are coming in and buying it all up, I mean, I don't.
How do we compete?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really buy that because there's, again, what I was saying earlier, it doesn't take much to get you busy. If you want to be a business owner and you can make a pretty good income, let's say as a plumber and one apprentice, and treat them well, pay them well, and you can have a nice lifestyle and income. I just kind of wish this was kind of more part of the conversation of this is an opportunity that a lot of you don't have to have an MBA to do this.
No.
You can have those kind of skills after working through it for a decade or so. But yeah, it's like this is something that a lot of young people should consider, and then they can provide some value to their community and probably a pretty meaningful work too. It's been my experience. I'm certain it is for you.
Yeah.
And I just kind of, I really want that to be more of a conversation in school for younger people or whatever, it's college training, et cetera, instead of just to focus on the technical side, or even before that, if you're considering going into it. Like, I think a lot of the time with the term like entrepreneurship, like we think of these like sexy, cool businesses that are like, it's just fine, like some agency, ad agency, or like making a tech company or something like that. And that's cool. That's fine. It's great. You should do that if that's what you're into. But you got private equity companies buying up tech businesses, apps, whatever. You got private equity companies buying up HVAC companies. Mm-hmm. Like it can work. Your business doesn't have to be sexy and cool for it to make a lot of money.
So you're suggesting that take a look around your community. What is a common denominator in your community? Everybody has a toilet.
Yeah, I mean,
Every single house has multiple toilets in it. Every once in a while, they're going to need to be updated. Every single house has an HVAC system in it. What was the first thing you did when you moved into your house?
Yeah.
So maybe these private equity firms are looking at it going, hey, listen, we're at like a generational point where all this infrastructure that's been installed in these houses is going to need to be updated. We have new technology coming out. This is the time to get into that business. It's a 5-10 year, it's going to be a 5-10 year glut in this business.
Mm.
Yeah.
So like, I think like if you were considering getting into business, I think the trades is kind of unique. Like, and maybe it's not. Maybe it's similar in all business. Yeah, I think you do need some experience. Like, I wouldn't recommend to someone being young who goes through some training, technical training, to just go and start their own business. I don't think they're going to have very happy customers, and I think that you're not going to make enough money soon enough. And I think and failing is fine. That's going to be a part of your business until the day you shut your doors or sell it.
Yeah.
But I think it's like, I think about this a lot. Like, what does it look like if you want to open up like a trades business yourself? And, I think that the beginning starts out in your 20s. You get some training. Or if you're lucky enough, like the ideal situation is you get to work under someone, and then you get to start the conversation of you taking over their business.
Succession.
Yeah. If you can do that, you find that person, you like working with them, and you can see a path to maybe grow the business or maintain it, and you're happy, oh, that's a home run. Okay, because you've already got the space problem solved that we talked about earlier. Maybe you've got a lease with a good landlord, or they own the space, and you're willing to lease it out from them, and the rest of their life, that's their pension taken care of.
Amazing.
Everyone's happy. That's, there's supposed to be this gold rush of, our parents selling businesses to us, but I actually talked. Okay, I'm going to come back to what we were talking about. I talked to a lawyer recently who, he's not a broker, but he does business deals, buys and sells businesses. And he says, that's not happening the way everyone thought it would be. This is me parsing information from him, because most of the time that happens is it's been long-term employees, okay, that take over the business, or it's children. They're not willing to just let someone from the outside come in and buy it. So that whole thing of buying boomers' businesses isn't happening the way as much as everyone thought. That doesn't mean you can't be one of those employees, right? You can go in and work with one of these people, build up some trust,
Yes,
and take over the business. I think that's difficult to do, but I think it is doable. Okay, let's say you want to start from scratch. Yeah, I think you obviously need the technical side of things, right? And hopefully you can get some good hands-on experience for a couple of years with somebody who's really good at running their own business. You could see what they do. You can ask a lot of questions. And then by that point, you kind of maybe have a bit of a grasp on what this might look like, right? So you're probably in your mid-20s now. And again, this is probably you don't have to start at 20. You can start at 30. And then you can start taking on some of your own jobs, if that's cool with your employer or whatever. You can get some of those skills. And I wouldn't recommend trying to bill out what your employer bills out right away. They're paying for you, they're paying for their space. You've got lower overhead. You need to get some reps in, right? So get that experience under your belt, learn how to make your customers really happy, and think of that kind of, don't do it for free, and don't do it for less than you're getting paid at your other job. You need to learn how to see your value in all this. But yeah, make a lot of customers happy, see how it looks, see what will end up being profitable. And then, I don't know, you could grow that out into the point you're happy to take a leap on your own. But yeah, I think it's more of the mindset of, I'm going to do this kind of slowly. I'm not going to try and take on too much work. And then by the time you're late 20s, early 30s, if you're well equipped to start your own business.
Yes.
And maybe throughout that, you had a little bit more time in your 20s because you don't have as much commitment. You can take some accounting. That's time well spent. Yeah, I've had formal education, and there's a lot of value in it. There's a lot of wasted time too.
For informal education?
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you specialize? What did you focus on?
Business. I had a business degree. So bit curious why I ended up being a furniture maker.
Oh, that's an amazing transition, man. That's quite the metamorphosis.
Yeah. But yeah, I think one thing I look back at, how part of the reason how I ended up doing what I'm doing is I went back to school, and I decided to take very specific courses and leave out the fluff that I didn't need. Because when I was in business, when I was working at a desk, what I realized was valuable in employment was technical skills. At the time, I worked in tech, and it was, you could be an engineer, software engineer. You could be good with analytics, this kind of thing. And I just recognized that was what was important. So when I decided I wanted to do industrial design, I focused on that, getting technical skills. And I did two programs in 1 year. Point being, if you're trying to be a business owner, you don't have to go get a whole business degree or business diploma. You can go to BCIT and you can take specific accounting courses, accounting 101 or 102, and get you to the point where you're comfortable with numbers and you're in control of that very important side of your business. And then I think the other, if you're going to get training, I think marketing's fine. I don't think it's you need to get your marketing plan for a trade business, as far as I'm concerned, is get a reasonably good looking website. Your time's probably better spent doing something else, so pay someone to make it look decent.
Which is very easy to do nowadays.
Very easy to do. Get on Google Maps and get as many, and this is what you do when you're building up those first few customers, is you get a ton of Google reviews. You get as many of those as possible. It doesn't just make you look good, that you show up on search higher, right? When someone searches like whatever, XYZ in my area, if you have lots of reviews and they're coming in regularly, you're going to show up higher and people will find you easier. There's your marketing platform.
Yeah.
for keeping busy enough. Like we said earlier, it doesn't take much to keep busy. And yeah, I think there's just that. Like you can pick and choose these programs. Like I think when you go to these schools, what I recognized when I went back was like it seemed like it was like you had to do this whole program, which I kind of ended up doing because I had the time. But the further I went along, I realized I was like, oh, you don't actually. They're not checking if I had this prereq to do the next course. They just want my money.
Exactly.
So I pay and I get the training I need. So that's like kind of like a hack. If you see something specific you want to learn, you probably don't need to go through the first 2 years. You can go and take that course. Maybe it's valuable to get something before, but there's that. So coming back to training at the beginning, some work, build out some clients, learn a bit of the business side, get more confident. And by the time you're 30, you could have a full-fledged business. And
I like the succession detail that you discussed, where you have that mentor in business and somebody that's potentially done all of that groundwork for you. And then it's just a matter of you getting acquainted with the business and the clients and the day-to-day ops.
Yeah.
More familiarize yourself with an already running machine. Because there are a lot of those out there.
There are a lot of those out there. And I think it's like, I think a big value in that. I think as like a younger person, you're probably like really excited. Like, oh, I want to go into this. I want to go into that. I want to grow the business doing this way. And you know, there's new opportunities, new technologies that come out. And like those things often really do need to be pursued. But with those ideas, I bet you a lot of the time that business owner has already tried them. And it's like, sometimes it's like, we're running a business here. Like, just because it's exciting and fun, like, doesn't mean it's something we should be spending our time doing. So there's value on that and what to stay away from.
Interesting.
Like it's.
So they've already dabbled in the novel. They know the bread and butter.
Yeah. Like, you know, like, I don't know exactly what the bread and butter of a plumber is, but you know, I imagine installing a hot water tank is
probably a regular thing, a regular
pretty
occurrence.
quick, and they know what to price, and they're in and out, and they'd be happy to do as many of those as possible without putting out their back.
Yeah. Well, a lot of plumbing businesses are service based.
Yeah,
they're just service based.
So you know, instead of trying to get maybe be pretty exciting as a younger person to do the whole big apartment building or something like that. The business owner with 30 years experience might say, this is probably how that's going to turn out. We could win, we could lose, or we could meet somewhere in the middle and be happy every Friday, that kind of thing. So
get halfway through a new construction project, the funding disappears.
Yeah.
The builder goes broke. This person doesn't show up. You have a major leak on site that you're responsible for.
Yeah.
Versus going in and changing a hot water tank.
Yeah. And so yeah, I think the succession thing is really interesting, and it's not too late to do. I think a lot of people want to work longer. I know we're probably in the middle of it.
We are in the middle of it,
yeah,
but we're also in the middle of something that a lot of people didn't expect, and that's runaway inflation in our country.
Yeah.
Which is forcing some of these business owners to stay longer in their business than they had anticipated.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe that makes that's like a good opportunity for if you're younger and you already have some experience to kind of go in and I don't think it would be appropriate to approach them and say, I want to take over your business, but it's just the same in the trades as it is in like probably real estate or any other kind of business or industry where it's like, it's networking. What that looks like to you, I don't know, but you know, networking to me was always like pretty intimidating thing, even like, especially like going to like, I went to like business school, and, you know, once you get into business school, it's like all these confident young people who have, you know, they're from, a lot of the time they're from families that are, you know, comfortable in that space of like mixing and mingling with rich people, and it can be intimidating and different. But like one thing I thought that was like really interesting was I started my business on the coast in 2020, and you know I was in Vancouver. Like, oh, there's tons of people here. There's lots of people here with money. Like this should probably work like pretty well, right? Not the case. Very difficult to own that and operate that type of business, sell the products that I do there.
Oh, you'd think it would be the exact opposite with all of the people and frequency of money changing hands and
Well, I mean, yeah, there's people with, that's where probably a lot of wealthy people live. I mean, I know that
yes.
on the coast, but I mean, I thought about, I kind of stepped back and maybe try to use my like business acumen to think about why isn't this working here? And it's like, well, you know, there's lots of wealthy people here. Okay, there's also more custom furniture makers here, so the market's a little more saturated. If you can afford the like custom high-end furniture, you can probably afford to go to the designer stores as well. And so I mean that market's like way more saturated than like the high-end furniture market is way more saturated than it is here. We don't really have many of those stores.
No, we don't.
So like I realized I'm like that's probably where these people are going, like because they, like we said from the very beginning of this conversation, where does furniture come from? When people ask me what I do and I tell them I'm a furniture maker, they're always like, oh, like I don't know I don't know one of those. So it kind of makes sense that like most people don't know that you can have custom furniture made still. So when you're excited to buy a new table, I imagine these people are going
To inform.
You know, Inform got down to a cool store, even just boutique one that's shipping in European products. I don't know. Inform, yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
I think there's that. Yeah. So I moved back, and you know, to my hometown, Penticton, and funny enough, like, you know, I've got a bit of a network. I've got lots of friends, and turns out lots of my friends here just stayed home and have worked in trades, building up businesses, and it's pretty quick. Like word gets around, you know, they're building a home, they're renovating a business. They're like, oh, do you want that? I've got a friend that does that. And that's what it looked like for me, right? Like it's just kind of the proverbial shaking the friend tree to get enough work. And that's what networking can look like in the trades, is just talk to your other trades friends. Like, hey, like just got my HVAC certificate or whatever that might be. I'm looking to talk to other employers, or this is kind of what I have my mind in. Do you know anyone doing this? And you can make those conversations happen pretty quickly, or other people might help you, is what I found is really interesting in the trade, is people are willing to like help each other, make the pie bigger. So,
Well, because it's complementary to their business, right?
yeah.
And it makes everybody look more proficient and professional.
Yeah.
If they have a fleet of qualified professionals that they can just deploy onto a site and go, hey, well, while you're at it, we got this wicked furniture maker in town. Looks like you're doing a nice reno here.
Yeah, no, it's great, and it's really fun. Like, you know, it just whatever you want to call it, circular. Like, you can bet I'm gonna tell if someone needs an electrician who my electrician is.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, it just works like that. So, I mean, I think the point is I'm trying to with the whole business ownership thing is, and when you're young starting out, you don't know how to network, you don't have those skills. It can just, that's what it can look like, is literally you talking to your friends, you talking to maybe your parents' friends. Hey, can I hang out with, you know, Dad, your pal? I just want to pick his brain on his experience doing that. What did it look like? And then, you know,
People are more, yeah, they're willing to talk, aren't they?
People love talking. People
Yeah, they
love
do.
saying like,
Yeah.
like people love talking about successes and, whether it's an ego stroke or if it's something that's fun for them to chat about, like that's all it is like a conversation.
Everybody wants to talk about their trophy room. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, no, for sure. And their battles. So, moving back has been a really good choice for me business wise. I don't know. I certainly imagine it would be a little trickier if you weren't from here. Like I grew up, and it's been really lucky. So many people come back, so I'm able to kind of have a bigger network here than I was on the coast, even though, there might seem
more
like
people and potentially more opportunity, but
yeah. I also find people are much more willing to help here, which is really sweet. I think it's maybe just we have a little more, if you want to call it the rat race or whatever, but it's like I just felt like on the coast everything was like time was so scarce. Like you could only do one thing in the day, and then if you ask it always felt like if you ask like a friend to do a favor, it was kind of like a big ask. And I did that for like, because you understand, like I'm drained for time. It's expensive to live here. I don't want to ask too much for you because I know what it feels like. But at the same time, we're human beings and we need help. So it's tricky kind of like with that battle. And then I come back here and like I still had that mentality, oh, I don't want to ask for too much. I don't want to ask for too much. And I had friends that'd be like, I can just do that for you. Or like, well, do you want help? Like we'll bring both our trucks down to help you do that, get started or whatever. And it's been really sweet.
that's great.
Yeah.
Small town.
So I know, small town. Like
Small
it's
town.
so like corny, but I'm like, oh, like
No,
it's
it's a real thing.
It's great. Like I have these kind of like these resources, and I give it back as much as I can. But yeah, it's good. It's good. And then on the business side, like if someone's like trying to think where they want to do this, the Okanagan is a good place because a lot of those people from the coast, a lot of my customers are moving here because they've sold their home, they sold their business, and they want to make a beautiful home and live in the hills, look at the lake, and they want nice things. And that's great. It's awesome. It's like,
And all of those people are going to need, as you've just described, a Rolodex of people to, as you have also just described, help them for the next 20 years live in comfort.
Yeah.
If they're of that retirement age, right?
Exactly.
Or even younger like we are.
Yeah.
You need a fleet of qualified technicians just to live anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah,
From a maintenance perspective, right?
I already found that out in my first year of home ownership. I think I actually found that on my first couple months, but we've patched up most of the things that I've needed doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, mostly plumbing. Nothing
really,
major, Nothing major. I mean, no, it was just like little things, but hot water tank, toilet. That's the typical thing.
So, product design. A lot of people think that furniture just appears out of a shipping container from China or somewhere else in the world. We are running contrary to that. We have to set up these studios, fill them with tools, fill them with wood, make sure they're electrified properly, which is a huge thing. I'm not sure if you've run into that or not, but you buy this exotic equipment from Europe and then you get it here and you got to do a whole bunch of upgrades to everything. It's a lot. And on the back end of all of that complication, we end up with a couple of pieces that look like this.
Yeah.
And this is a new SKU, for lack of a better term, that you've developed in the last quarter of 2024. Why don't you talk a little bit about them?
So yeah, I made quite a few of these, like a more watered down design over the years. I kind of stopped doing the spec design for a little while. I mean, I was kind of focused on growing out the custom side of the business, but at the end of the year, I had some offcuts, all pretty similar size, and I thought, which isn't always the case.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know, instead of making like, you know, run of the mill cutting boards and stuff, I'm gonna make some furniture, try and get a little more revenue out of the material I have. And I knew how to make these kind of quickly, and they're kind of like a guitar pick style shaped top, and I put this recess in it on the CNC, and that for me is to get a little bit of scale and repeatability on the manufacturing side. And yeah, I do the recess and the mortises for the legs all on the CNC.
The through mortise is a beautiful detail.
Yeah, I do
Pull it down. Pull it down. Sit it next to you there. I want to see.
I'll see here.
So to have a leg physically come through the seat assembly, so the tenon is poking through from the leg. It's through mortised into the seat, and then we have these beautiful wedges which add pressure and a sense of security for us
Myself.
as furniture makers. It's beautiful, man.
Yeah, it's nice
a really
detail.
really beautiful joint.
I think you know, that's not too much extra work to do it as a through tenon, and that's the first thing that buyers will notice is I think it just kind of resonates a little bit and it screams handmade.
Yes.
Because you don't see exposed joinery that often. I think the funny thing about exposed joinery was way back when, when people were doing what we do now, is that a craftsman's skill is often measured on hiding joinery. But we came now to this point where we're showing the joinery to show people that it's made a certain way. It's made properly with real old world furniture making techniques. So that's kind of just what I like to do in a lot of my pieces is exposed joinery. I also know it's really strong, so that makes me happy.
Yeah.
And I just think it's like a compelling little detail. The recess is nice, and I use a CNC. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that, I mean, there's not a lot. It's not a huge conversation, but they say that's not real woodworking. But for me, like, I love the production side of things.
Yes.
I like to fine tune it and get some scale, and make things quickly and repeatably, and try and do things faster and better every time. And there's a whole suite of skills that you need to operate a machine like that. So I'm happy to use it when I can.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
They're beautiful, man.
Thanks.
They're
Yeah.
beautiful. And a great addition to a furniture package, as you say. You know, you're delivering a chair and table assembly to a client. You're like, oh, hey, can I just sneak this in here for the photo shoot? Oh, well, you can just leave that there. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Easy upsell.
Yeah.
It is, in the sense, like a cutting board, whereas a piece like this is consumable.
Yeah.
You don't have to think before you buy a piece like this. It's like, I know where 3 of those would go in my house right now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I made them kind of nesting. Hopefully it doubles the upsell. You can buy 2, kind of fits in the other one, and they look pretty in your home. So yeah, we'll see. I made 19 of them. 1 was a defect, which I was pretty happy. It was just 1. And yeah, I'll ship them if people want to buy them. But for the most part, it's supposed to be a nice upsell at an approachable price. And yeah, I love doing this kind of thing.
Right on, man. You know what? It's really nice to sit down and talk to somebody who's going through the contemporary struggle that we're going through as well, and all of the enjoyment of it, you know, the struggle and the enjoyment of the industry. I think it's a really important thing that you're doing, and it really helps to beautify our communities, having people and craftsmen that have your skill set in our communities. So
yeah, this has been a really cool conversation, and yeah, I think my message, I guess, in all this, if there's younger people thinking about getting into trades, getting into craft, is just think about it. It's really difficult when you're starting out, especially when you're really young without much experience. It's just try to keep in mind, like, it's like a long-term thing. It's probably 10 years. That's the best crystal ball I can give you. I don't know what your 10 years looks like, but it's just going to take some time. You'll have a lot of success. But yeah, man, thanks for having me here.
yeah, right on. Thanks a lot, Sam.
Great.